Even if The View is not a bona fide news program, we haven't decided that yet, that wouldn't dictate that they have to have any particular candidate on the show. Rather, the rule just means that the TV station has to provide comparable time and placements. They would still retain discretion even if the FCC were to rule against them. At the end of the day, we're going to make our decision based on the facts and the record that's developed at the agency. And again, the Disney issue and the media docket more broadly is ultimately a small part of what we do at the FCC. We have a much bigger agenda that we're running.
What in the dystopian future is happening? All I wanted to do was watch The View today and look at what I saw during the commercial break.
I had this idea for a show. Different women, different points of view.
The View has welcomed your favorite guests and covered the issues you care about for nearly 30 years. Now, the FCC wants to control who is allowed to appear on the show. Viewers, use your voice. Scan this QR code. You have until July 6th.
That's alarming. What's happening to freedom of speech in this country? And no, they didn't just play that commercial once. They played another version towards the end of the episode.
Chicago, use your voice. No one supports your community like ABC7, sharing your stories, holding us together. ABC7 has proudly served you for more than 70 years. Every day we commit to inform, entertain, and serve you. Now, the FCC is questioning our commitment to the community. Show your support for WLS-TV by scanning this QR code today. You have until July 29th to tell the FCC to keep your trusted local station on the air.
The View is America's #1 most watched daytime talk show with millions, upwards of 2 million viewers an episode. Love it or hate it, The View is highly influential, and it has become crystal clear that this administration doesn't like the influence that The View has on voters, specifically women voters. I wish I didn't have to block out the code on those last 2 commercial clips, but you know how these apps are. They don't like codes like that. But you can easily access that web page where you can let the FCC know how you feel about what's happening to The View by Googling The View and FCC. You'll see a link from ABC and it'll take you directly to the page that you need to go to.
What's up, family? So we got an interesting conversation happen today. Um, I don't want to talk about something that's been brewing for a minute and it's finally starting to bubble over. The View, that show, the one that's been on air for almost 30 years, calling itself a platform for different points of view, quote unquote, while somehow every single point of view just happens to be a Democrat talking point. Well, the chickens are coming home to roost. And I mean that literally because the FCC is cracking down. Disney is cutting costs. The hosts are getting denied pay raises and the whole thing is starting to crumble from the inside out. So let me break this down for you. Here's what's happening. The Federal Communications Commission under Chairman Brandon Carr is preparing to rule that The View is not a bona fide news program. Now, this might sound like technical jargon, but let me explain what that actually means in plain English. The View has been operating under a news exemption that allows them to pick and choose which political candidates they interview without having to give equal time to opposing candidates. They've been calling themselves a news program so they don't have to follow the same rules as every other broadcaster. But the FCC is saying, hold on, you are not a news program. You are a talk show with a political agenda. And if you're going to interview Kamala Harris or any Democrat, you need to give the Republican candidate comparable airtime too. That's not censorship. That's fairness. That's how the rules were supposed to work all along.
The FCC is about to crack down on The View. Finally. So they are saying that, hey, we need equal reporting time for both sides. And you guys are not a bona fide news program. So we need you to shape up and show other viewpoints. Whoa, what a concept. Something being called The View and actually looking at other viewpoints. How about not just bullying people just because you don't agree with them? And a lot of it is the bullying of conservatives and Republicans, or the bullying of Christians, all of that. So thank God we can actually see something now that maybe is sort of kind of fair. Because when I look at it, all I see is a whole bunch of hypocrites that tell you that you should be afraid of this nation, that you should hate America and anything that doesn't just allow a whole bunch of tomfoolery and everybody being whatever they want to be, acting like cats and all of that. I'm sorry, that's but anyways, I will keep you guys updated on this. This is great news. They didn't say anything about a cancellation. That's what I was hoping for. But we're finally getting some traction of it actually being a show that can have healthy debates. What a concept.
So there you have it. And here's the part that really gets me. The View is now running commercials during their own show, as you've seen in the first clip, asking viewers to fight the FCC. I'm serious. And they're playing ads during commercial breaks that say the FCC wants to control who is allowed to appear on the show. Use your voice. Scan this QR code. They are literally begging their audience to defend their right to only have one political viewpoint on air. That's basically what it is. Think about that for a second. They're calling it a free speech issue when all the FCC is saying is if you're going to call yourself a show about different views, actually show different views. That's not a violation of free speech. That's a violation of their comfort zone. They've gotten so used to having a platform where they can trash conservatives, mock Christians, and push far left propaganda without any pushback that the idea of having to treat both sides fairly feels like an attack to them. And also, in the first clip, you heard the woman say, as she was trying to watch The View, and she was disturbed by the FCC whole commercial with The View and the FCC trying to basically stop The View whole jargon thingy in regards of The View basically begging their audience to fight at the FCC. She mentioned that The View is very influential. So don't you think they will be influential in actually advocating for healthy debate, even if you agree to disagree? And also, it will actually help actually advocate for maturity in young adults and young people in the next generation, because you'll be an example of that as a talk show. And on top of that, also being able to advocate to have hard conversations, which a lot of people don't like to have nowadays. Hard conversations, even if they agree to disagree. But the simple fact is the beauty of different perspectives can let alone have different solutions where you can weigh your options where it becomes a productive conversation. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with the FCC basically holding the View to do that very thing? And you know what? That tells you everything you need to know about where their heads are at. Because if your show can't survive having a genuine conservative voice at the table, then your show was never about different points of view. It was about one point of view pretending to be fair, right?
I was asked at the beginning of the week whether I thought broadcasters should air the president's remark, and I said, of course they should. I'm Brendan Carr. I'm the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and they should do so because they have an obligation at the end of the day to operate in the public interest, to serve the needs of their communities. And I think making sure that people have access to significant presidential addresses is part and parcel of what all broadcasters should want to do. There's been a lot of interest in Congress. Obviously, we got a letter from Congress, asking us to investigate the decisions to do this or not do this. And, we're reviewing the letter itself, at least at this point. And there's been a lot of interest in this. So we'll see where it goes.
So there you have Brandon Carr, the FCC chairman. Now, let's get into the other part of this story because it gets even better. According to page 6, The View has been hit with major budget cuts. As you guys can see the article on the screen, it says The View hit by major cost cutting with 1-star denied pay raise and wardrobe budgets slashed. So, as it reads, The View has been hit with major cost cuts, which have affected not only the host wardrobe budgets, but their pay raises. A source told Page 6 Hollywood that several of the hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Behar, whatever you want to say, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, Anna Navarro, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, have taken pay cuts since season 29 premiered in September 2025. Although Goldberg, 70, is making a mid-7-figure salary, and is the highest paid in the group. Farrah Griffin, 37, can't say the same. An insider told the outlet that the new mom is earning a mid-six-figure salary and was even denied a big raise when she asked. Not only that, but the women's wardrobe budget was affected, with a source explaining they are all mad because they were all wearing really expensive designer clothes, and now it's the same budget of a Wendy Williams type show versus a marquee daytime show. They keep downsizing and downsizing and downsizing, quote unquote. So, and then you go here and it says, unfortunately, more cuts are expected as the new season is set to begin filming in September, with some wondering when enough is enough. The show has downgraded its filming space, and the fan favorite Halloween show will be scrapped this year. Meanwhile, product integrations have become rare as advertisers have begun reaching out to competitors of The View. There are definitely tensions with ABC, the source said. A rep for The View did not respond to a request for comment, and ESPN and ABC rep also declined to comment. So, we're talking pay cuts across the board. Whoopi Goldberg, who's making a mid-seven-figure salary, still the highest paid. Everybody else took a pay cut. You guys heard it since season 29. And Alyssa Farrah Griffin, the supposed conservative on the show, asked for a raise and got denied. And she's making mid-six figures, and they told her no. Now, I know an easy way for Disney to save money. Cut Whoopi. I'm just saying. Cut the fat, literally. She's the highest paid and she brings the least to the table. She sounds incoherent half the time, as a lot of people would say from their perspectives. And I get the sentiment from a lot of individuals when I look at different opinions down in the comments and what people are saying. They say basically most of the time Whoopi Goldberg sounds incoherent or don't even know what the hell she's talking about. I'm just saying. Not my words. We the people, or a lot of individuals, feel this way. I'm not going to speak for all, but the majority. And I haven't heard her make a good point in years from my perspective when I do watch the clips, because I don't actually watch the show. And if Disney wants to really trim the budget, start with the person making seven figures to sit there and nod while everybody else just talks, right? But on top of the pay cuts, the wardrobe budget got slashed, as you heard. And when you look at that, right, they're downgrading their filming space. Advertisers are pulling out and reaching out to competitors. Product integrations are becoming rare. The whole thing is shrinking, is my point. Now, let me connect the dots here, because this is where the bigger picture comes in. The View is losing money. That's what the budget cut tells us. When a show starts cutting pay, cutting wardrobe budget, scrapping special episodes, and losing advertisers, that's a show that's not bringing in the revenue it used to, according to the person in the first clip that said that The View is getting millions of views and is the most influential. I mean, the budget cut says otherwise. It always comes down to the money, right? And at the same time, the FCC is investigating whether they've been operating under false pretenses, calling themselves a news program to avoid equal time rules. So you got one hand, the government is squeezing them from the top, and the other hand, the market is squeezing them from the bottom, which is we, the people who actually watch it. Obviously, it is coming to be a very propaganda arm type of show. So a lot of Americans are tuning out. See, at the end of the day, the market will determine how valuable you are. Viewers, right? So advertisers don't want to be associated with the constant controversy. Viewers are tuning out or switching to other platforms. And the corporate parent, Disney, is looking at the bottom line and saying, we need to cut costs somewhere. This is what accountability looks like. And this is where it says, right? And check out this article from the New York Post. It says The View faces trouble as FCC prepares to crack down on ABC show, revoke Disney licensing report. The Federal Communications Commission is preparing to rule that ABC's The View is not a bona fide news program, a decision that would upend more than 2 decades of precedent and subject the Disney-owned daytime talk show to federal equal time rules for political candidates, according to a report. Bloomberg reported Wednesday that the FCC is also expected to escalate a separate investigation into Disney's broadcast television licenses, moving the matter toward an administrative hearing that could ultimately threaten ABC-owned stations in New York, Los Angeles, and other major markets. The anticipated rulings, which people familiar with the matter told Bloomberg could come before Labor Day, would represent the most aggressive regulatory action against a major U.S. broadcaster in decades, and it mark a significant victory for FCC Chairman Brandon Carr's effort to overhaul how the agency policies political programming. If the FCC strips The View of its longstanding news exemption, the program generally will have to offer rival candidates comparable airtime when it interviews someone running for office, a requirement ABC argues would fundamentally alter its editorial discretion. Disney is expected to challenge any adverse rulings, according to Bloomberg. The FCC Media Bureau's ruling on The View could be appealed to the full FCC and then to federal court, while the separate license proceeding could eventually be heard by FCC Chairman Brandon Carr or the full commission before any judicial appeal. So there you have it, family, right? This is what accountability looks like. Accountability looks like this. It doesn't always come in a dramatic courtroom moment. Sometimes it comes quietly through a spreadsheet, through declining ad revenue, through a budget meeting where somebody says, we can't afford the designer clothes anymore. And that's the only part that people need to understand. You can only push an agenda for so long before the audience gets tired of it. You can only call yourself a balanced show for so long before the regulators catch up to you. The bill always come due. And I want to show you something that really proves the point, right? Sarah Haynes, the one they call the independent on the show, was asked about her top presidential candidates for 2028. Now, remember, she's supposed to be the moderate, the rational voice, the one who can go either way. Her top picks, Wes Moore, Mark Kelly, and Pete Buttigieg. All Democrats, not one Republican, not even a moderate Republican like Nikki Haley or Marco Rubio, not one. And she's the independent. That's the problem with The View in a nutshell. They have a liberal, pretending to be a conservative. There's no balance. There never was. And now the FCC is finally saying enough is enough, right? If you're going to use the public airwaves, you have to serve the public interest.
And against a guy, he lost. And, you know, there's a lot of low testosterone guys out there like Pete Hegseth who will not vote for a woman. They don't want to see a powerful woman in that position for some reason.
So I
like
totally...
other countries. I mean, we're not New Zealand, we're not Ireland, Germany,
Yeah.
Mexico. Mexico has a woman in the
Israel
position of El
has.
Presidente.
But I disagree because I don't think it's because she's a woman that they won't vote for her. I know sexism affects votes.
Think of a woman that could win. Tell me one woman.
Well, I still believe Hillary Clinton should have.
She
won the popular vote. But I'm
Yeah.
saying that down the road, not right now, I love Alyssa Slotkin. I think she's phenomenal.
You think she could win in 2028?
Well, not 2028. 2028, my top people, and it's, again, not on identity, but on policy and how they carry themselves, would be Wes Moore, John Kelly, and Pete Buttigieg. Mark Kelly, John Kelly. Oh my God,
John
totally
Kelly, I
different
think, is a
person.
great
No, sorry, Mark Kelly.
Who's John Kelly?
The former general who was Trump's chief of staff.
He's not, Mark Kelly, and then Buttigieg. And a lot of it I'm realizing as I analyze why I like these is, thank you, policy does matter to me, but I do believe the country is more moderate than the parties would love you to believe. And as
I think this country would elect Pete Buttigieg, who by the way, I agree, is extremely qualified and would be a wonderful president.
I say we don't know until we try it, because I don't think we live in a time.
We can't afford to try it right now.
No, because I don't think people are that limited in how they see the world. What we haven't had is competence.
We have Donald Trump as the president.
Like I said, that's my point.
That's what
so we have
has not been the
we
barometer.
don't have competence. On the swing of that, people are looking for people with character, integrity, and policy to me is almost third. And I mean that deeply. That's the policies almost everyone agrees on. The primaries pick the most extreme candidates because of how our system works.
Now, that's Sarah Haynes. That's what I was talking about in regards to my example, who is pretending to be a conservative, but comes off as a liberal or is a liberal. And when you look at that, right, about the public interest, and the public interest is not served by 6 people sitting around a table agreeing with each other about how terrible Republicans are. The public interest is served by actual debate, actual disagreement, and actual different points of view. That's why Charlie Kirk was so popular, right? Because he actually advocated to show the maturity of an adult conversation, even if you agree or disagree with his viewpoints. And that was the beauty of what he brought back to the table of maturity and productive conversation, right? But they don't want that. They never did, because when you bring on somebody like Elizabeth Hazelbeck, an actual conservative who actually pushes back, they couldn't handle it. Don't take my word for it. I'll show you.
This is not the way. And you're right. If somebody come at me with a mask on, run and talk about, hey, and didn't show me they were
Yeah, this is the party of masks. You guys force masks on everybody in the United States.
I
Like, I don't want to hear you can't see my face, and, you know, I just can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
I know that you can't, but I think, yeah, I was going to say, that's a whole different thing.
We need a strong border, especially now with our current global situation. And I believe that you may say you don't want border control and you're against ICE, but I actually don't believe you in your daily lives. How many people in the audience here had to go through security to get here? This is an authorized audience. We need strong borders more than ever right now. We are being infiltrated.
But Elizabeth, can I give you on the border when Renee Good and Alex Peretti were murdered? Secretary Noem is wholly unqualified for her job. She has zero empathy. She is not taking any responsibility.
Keep calling this like an undocumented attack, that you don't agree with the war, and illegal.
Unconstitutional.
So did you believe it was illegal in April of 2011 when the Office of Legal Counsel memo stated from President Obama that the president has constitutional authority to direct the use of military force in Libya because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest prior congressional approval was not constitutionally required to use military force in these operations? Where were you then complaining?
I agreed. Well, I wasn't on the show then.
No, but personally, would you have stood against that?
I was at home complaining. No, I wasn't complaining because the Office of Legal Counsel was involved. And the Office of Legal Counsel...
Oof, a breath of fresh air, right? Common sense is common, I guess, right? It still exists. The hope is still there. Boy, I tell you, The View with the current cast, they know how to attack, dodge, and deflect. And that's what lack of accountability is. So, when you look at this, right, because I just showed you Elizabeth Hazelback, an actual conservative who pushes back and they couldn't handle it, as you guys can see yourself in the clips. They never brought another real conservative on after her, if you ever peeped that. They went with fake conservatives, rhinos, people who would go along and get along, and now the system is catching up to them. So here's the takeaway, family. This is bigger than one show. This is about how the media has been operating for decades under the guise of objectivity while pushing a very specific agenda. The View is just the most obvious example because they're not even trying to hide it anymore. But the same principle applies to every network, every cable news channel, every outlet that claims to be fair and balanced while carefully curating who gets to speak and what gets said. The FCC investigation in The View is a crack in the dam. And once that crack opens, the water starts flowing. Other shows are going to get looked at. Other networks are going to get scrutinized. And the whole system of media propaganda that has been rigging the conversation for years is going to have to answer for itself. Because at the end of the day, you cannot manipulate the truth forever. You cannot control the narrative forever. You cannot silence opposing voices forever. And then act surprised when somebody finally asks, hey, where's the other side? That's why we have gone so far with political violence to the point where we are now hurting each other and more divisive than ever, when we should be coming together with difference of opinions to actually come together in unity and love to have the best solutions take place and know what the best solution is from different perspectives for the best interests of this country. But you can't have that if you basically have individuals who are willing to ostracize, let alone use violence to the simple fact where they don't even have respect for human life, that they want to end the human life of another individual who have a different viewpoint as them. That's how deep this have gotten. What happened to critical thinking that we were taught in school? What happened to thinking freely? Now it's like you don't get to think. You only think what we tell you to think about. And that's where it has come. It has come to the point where it's so dangerous now, which is my concern for us as a country and for the next generation, where if you have an opposing view, technically some individuals want to kill the other individuals or death threats just because of a different point of view. So the truth has a way of coming out and the consequences have a way of catching up. Now, let me leave you with this. Numbers chapter 32, verse 23 says, be sure your sin will find you out. That's a verse from the Bible, but you don't have to be spiritual to understand the principle behind it. What it means is you cannot hide forever. You cannot build a system on deception, on manipulation, on pretending to be something you're not and expect it to stand. Eventually, the truth catches up. Eventually, the receipts come out. Eventually, the budgets get cut. The regulators show up and the house of cards comes down. That's not a religious concept. That's a life concept. It applies to shows like The View. It applies to corporations like Disney. It applies to politicians who think they can lie their way through every election cycle. And it applies to regular people too. The choices you make, the corners you cut, the truths you bend, they all stack up. And one day the stack gets tall enough that it topples over. So the lesson here is simple. Live in a way where you don't have to worry about what gets found out. Be transparent, be honest, be willing to hear the other side. Because if you build your whole platform on excluding people and manipulating information, eventually the platform gives way. And when it does, don't be surprised. The sin always finds you out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, share the video with somebody who needs to hear it, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you next one. On that note, family, peace.